for any act of obedience or virtue that I could possibly be guilty of. He could not do it. You or any other man with eyes in his head may see that, if he chooses.' 'It seems improbable, certainly,' said Dick, musing. 'It seems improbable because it is improbable,' his friend returned. 'If you would furnish him with an additional inducement to forgive you, let there be an irreconcilable breach, a most deadly quarrel between you and me, let there be a pretence of such a thing, I mean, of course, and he'll do fast enough. As to Nell, constant dropping will wear away a stone. You know you may trust to me as far as she is concerned, so whether he lives or dies, what does it come to? That you become the sole inheritor of the wealth of this rich old hunks, that you and I spend it together, and that you get into the bargain a beautiful young wife.' 'I suppose there's no doubt about his being rich?' said Dick. 'Doubt! Did you hear what he let fall the other day when we were there? Doubt! What will you doubt next, Dick?' It would be tedious to pursue the conversation through all its artful windings, or to develop the gradual approaches by which the heart of Richard Swiveller was gained. It is sufficient to know that vanity, interest, poverty, and every spendthrift consideration urged him to look upon the proposal with favour, and that where all other inducements were wanting, the habitual carelessness of his disposition stepped in and still weighed down the scale on the same side. To these impulses must be added the complete ascendancy which his friend had long been accustomed to exercise over him, an ascendancy exerted in the beginning sorely at the expense of his friend's vices, and was in 9 cases out of 10 looked upon as his designing tempter, when he was indeed nothing but his thoughtless, light-headed tool. The motives on the other side were something deeper than any which Richard Swiveller entertained or understood, but these being left to their own development, require no present elucidation. The negotiation was concluded very pleasantly, and Mr Swiveller was in the act of stating in flowery terms that he had no insurmountable objection to marrying anybody plentifully endowed with money or movables, who could be induced to take him, when he was interrupted in his observations by a knock at the door, and the consequent necessity of crying, 'Come in!' The door was opened, but nothing came in except a soapy arm and a strong gush of tobacco. The gush of tobacco came from the shop downstairs, and the soapy arm proceeded from the body of a servant girl, who being then and there engaged in cleaning the stairs, had just drawn it out of a warm pail to take in a letter, which letter she now held in her hand, proclaiming aloud with that quick perception of surnames peculiar to her class, that it was for Mr Snivelling. Dick looked rather pale and foolish when he glanced at the direction, and still more so when he came to look at the inside, observing that it was one of the inconveniences of being a lady's man, and that it was very easy to talk as they had been talking, but he had quite forgotten her. 'Her who?' demanded Trent. 'Sophy Wackles,' said Dick. 'Who's she?' 'She's all my fancy painted her, sir, that's what she is,' said Mr Swiveller, taking a long pull at the rosy, and looking gravely at his friend. 'She's lovely. She's divine. You know her.' 'I remember,' said his companion carelessly. 'What of her?' 'Why, sir,' returned Dick, 'between Miss Sophia Wackles and the humble individual who has now the honour to address you, warm and tender sentiments have been engendered, sentiments of the most honourable and inspiring kind. The goddess Diana, sir, that calls aloud for the chase, is not more particular in her behaviour than Sophia Wackles, I can tell you that.' 'Am I to believe there's anything real in what you say?' demanded his friend. 'You don't mean to say that any love-making has been going on?' 'Love-making, yes. Promising, no,' said Dick. 'There can be no action for breach, that's one comfort. I've never committed myself in writing, Fred.' 'And what's in the letter, pray?' 'A reminder, Fred, for to-night. A small party of 20, making 200 light fantastic toes in all, supposing every lady and gentleman to have the proper complement. I must go, if it's only to begin breaking off the affair. I'll do it. Don't you be afraid. I should like to know whether she left this herself. If she did, unconscious of any bar to her happiness, it's affecting, Fred.' To solve this question, Mr Swiveller summoned the handmaid, and ascertained that Miss Sophy Wackles had indeed left the letter with her own hands, and that she had come accompanied, for decorum's sake no doubt, by a younger Miss Wackles, and that on learning that Mr Swiveller was at home, and being requested to walk upstairs, she was extremely shocked, and professed that she would rather die. Mr Swiveller heard this account with a degree of admiration not altogether consistent with the project in which he had just concurred. But his friend attached very little importance to his behaviour in this respect, probably because he knew that he had influence sufficient to control Richard Swiveller's proceedings in this or any other matter, whenever he deemed it necessary, for the advancement of his own purposes, to exert it. Chapter 7.